Start with a small little prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Glorifying the Supreme Being Vasudev. Vasudev was the father of Krishna, and therefore Krishna is called Vasudev. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavat refers to the divine, Bhagavan. And we've talked about that a few times, so I won't go into it now. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're in a very interesting chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and this is chapter 12. Chapter 12 is exciting because it shows you something about the wisdom of the Gita that confuses and perplexes most people. Most people want a set path. If you look at most religions of the world, they're actually quite simple. If you worship God, if you follow these rules, you go to heaven. It's simple. There's nothing complicated about it. At the most, they might tell you to go to church or the mosque or something like that, and there'll be a process that set of rules that you follow, some commandments, some things. If you do that, heaven is guaranteed. You accept Christ or whatever else it is, you follow the hadith according to the Muslims, and, that's it. But in the Vedas, or in what is popularly called Hinduism, it isn't so. The Vedic spirituality, Veda means knowledge, okay? Vedic spirituality is full of contradictions. Let me give you a few of them. Not that the others aren't full of, they're full of their own kinds of contradictions. Like the God who judges people and then at the same time says that you're supposed to love him. The God who you're supposed to, who knows everything but then lets you do everything wrong. I mean, if he knows, then why is he letting you do wrong things? So there's a set of contradictions there. But here we have some very interesting philosophical contradictions that actually confuse a lot of people. That confusion is what Krishna is addressing in the 12th chapter. But I will present it to you right now. So on one hand, you see that you're told that God is everything. God is everywhere. But at the same time, you're told God is somewhere, like a being, a person. You're told that God is to be revered, but at the same time, God's mother Yashoda, is running after Krishna with a stick and beating him. You're told that God is to be loved, and we think in terms of some kind of a pure, saintly, divine love that is, like you love all creatures the same. But the gopis have intimate relationships with Krishna. They kiss him. They make love to him. There is such a deep wealth of intimacy there. You have every possible... then comes the big one, which is what is being addressed here, is that God is formless, and yet God has a form. God is everywhere, and yet you worship him as a stone idol in a temple. How do you resolve all this stuff? Like, how do you make sense of all this? So Krishna is actually doing that. He is making sense of it for Arjuna, and he's showing him what actually the differences between the different paths. He says, actually, it's like this. There are different paths for different people. So the Vedas don't think in terms that of all human beings are the same. It understands that everybody's at a different level of consciousness. And when people are at different levels of consciousness, just like kids in school, we don't give them all the same things to study. Like the first grade kids are not given Shakespeare to study, and the kids in the 11th grade are not given ABC to study, right? There are different grades, there are different stages of growth, and we give them different things to work on. So it's the same with spirituality. It's not a one size fits all, but rather something that is very dynamic, and you'll begin to see that in here now. So if you have any questions while I'm pulling this up, go ahead. which if you were here last time, from the for last time's meeting. Krisha, Mariah, no, neither of you. Swati, you were here, right? Yeah. Okay, so at the cost of boring you a little bit, Swati, I'm going to repeat a little something just for the sake of those who were not here, because it all needs to make sense. But I will come to the main points rather than reading the verse by verse. So in chapter 12, text number 5, when Arjun, so let me go back one step. So Arjun's actually asking him the question, he says, which is more perfect? Like, which path is better? Those who worship you in devotion and love, which is called bhakti, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifest, which in today's time is called Advaita. Advaita means non-dual. Dvaita means dual, and Advaita means non-dual. So non-duality, which is a term Buddhists also talk about a lot. Is that better? Or another term for that is Vedanta, the end of the Vedas. Though it's a very confusing term because Vedanta is, anyway, long story. I won't get into it right now. For those of you who not know about Vedanta, then I'll discuss it, but otherwise I'll put that away for now. So which path is better? The path where you consider God to be a person, or the path where you consider God to be an energy or the universe? Like a lot of people who come to spirituality in the Western world particularly, think of God as the universe, and if you ask them, what is the universe? Oh, it's everything. Okay, then did everything create everything? They have no answer now. They haven't thought it through. Right? If the universe is everything, did the universe create itself? Like, how did everything come to be? How did these human forms come to be? How did the dinosaurs come to be, and the cows and the monkeys and the fruits and everything else? Did that impersonal universe somehow, that is everywhere, manifest all of this? Yes, I think Mariah's got a question.
I do, thank you. Because wouldn't that be true, though, of any way you define God? If God were a person, who created the person?
Right. Actually, the answer to that one is given very interestingly right in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, where Krishna first begins to speak. And it's the answer to the conundrum that most people have. So some people would say, okay, something made everything, right? We'll start there. Because just saying the universe doesn't tell us anything, really. So we say creation. Creation is the thing that everyone's been, I think ever since the beginning of time, human beings have puzzled when they looked at this world and they looked at how incredible it was, and they were like, how did this happen? How did this come about? So there must have been something that made it. That something must have been bigger than us. Some thought that's a bigger person. Some thought it's an older person. I think if we were bulls, we would have thought it was a giant bull. If we're humans, we think it's a big human. So then there were those that began to think of this deeper because they went into meditation, they began to experience, and they experienced it as energy. So the question you're asking, Mariah, is then what created the creator? What created God? That's a great question. The two ways the Bhagavad Gita explains it. Krishna starts off the Bhagavad Gita by saying, never was there a time when I did not exist. But he doesn't just finish there. He says, nor you, to Arjun, nor all these kings assembled here. And never will there be a time when we shall cease to be. So what he's pointing out here is that not only, and of course we know from Einstein about how the energy is neither created nor destroyed, but the same thing was being said by Krishna 5,000 years ago, where he's stating that we, the living entity, are neither created nor destroyed. We have existed eternally. There was never a time when we did not exist, and there will never be a time when we shall cease to be. Never. Right? We are eternal. So there is nothing that created God, and there is nothing that is the cause of. So again, second word, he is referred to as Adi Deva, the original being. He is referred to as Adi Purusha, the original person, the original God. He is referred to in many statements through the Gita. In fact, the time when Arjun sees him, he refers to him as the original being, the original person. But keep in mind, Krishna himself has already given away that we existed alongside him, right? So we are as such manifestations of energy. And if you look at energy, it's a very interesting thing to look at. Energy is eternal. We are eternal. What's the difference between us and energy? In fact, if you look at it, we are actually energy. But what is the difference between material energy and us? One word. Who wants to guess?
Form.
Oh, material energy has form as well. In fact, the real us does not have form.
Okay.
Consciousness.
Was that Krisha? Yes. No? Who said that?
No.
Then? Who
See.
said consciousness? Swati. Okay. So yes, you're right. Absolutely right. What distinguishes us from material energy is both are energy, right? Heat is also energy. Light is also energy. Matter is also energy. And we are also, as a soul, we are also energy. The difference between us and all of material creation is one thing, consciousness. We are conscious of what is going on, right? We are not in a state, we are in fact at a highly conscious state, well, relative to most creatures on this planet. And as a result, we have something called choice. We have something called free will. Because along with consciousness comes free will, the freedom to act. And therefore we are the ones who incur karma. Now you see, it's a sort of slippery slope here. It comes with a responsibility. Consciousness is not just given to you just like that. It comes with a responsibility. The tiger has no karma, by the way. He kills an animal, no karmic reaction. Right? Human being kills an animal, karmic reaction. Right? Because we have a higher level of consciousness, and along with that comes a higher level of empathy, a higher level of emotionality, a higher level of intelligence, a higher ability to understand the nature of reality. And so for all those reasons, consciousness, that responsibility of consciousness, demands that we get to understand who we are and why we're here. Human beings who do not exercise that level of consciousness then eventually sink back into lower species. Lower means less conscious species. So, comes a very interesting question. He's asking which path is better. And Krishna replies in a very diplomatic way. He doesn't go around my way or the highway. He doesn't say, you got to do this or do that. He just gives him the choices, as he's been doing all through the Gita. He's been saying there is this kind of yoga and there is that kind of yoga, and there is this path and there is that path. And I leave it to you, whatever you want to do. He expects Arjun to be intelligent. And oh yeah, there was one thing I forgot to bring up. Why all the contradictions that I was talking about earlier, right? Why do they put in all these contradictions? Like, God is formless and has... So there are two schools. These two schools of thought that they're talking about out here. One says that God is formless, nirakar. And the other says God has got form, sakar. Right? Why these contradictions? There's a reason. And that reason is very interesting. Remember, for those of you that attended my course, you would have heard me say this. This and its opposite are simultaneously true.
I was just about to say that.
Right? So when you have a contradiction, when your mind is presented with two sides of reality, right? Remember I gave you the example of my niece and her two ice cream cone things, of one is strawberry and one is vanilla, and you asked her which is best, and she would say, both are best. We're like, what is this? And then she'd say, nothing matters. And I was like, what the hell is this kid saying? So the point being that when you look at both sides of a situation, right? Let's say you and I are having an argument, we're having a fight, and if we stop our arguing and we just listen to each other, I listen to your point of view, I let you know that I've heard your point of view. I say, look, what you're trying to say is this, is that correct? And you say, yep, that is what I'm trying to say. And then you do the same for me. You hear my point of view, you repeat it back to me. Now I know you heard me. You know what's going to happen? It's a very simple thing that'll happen. Who knows what will happen? If we truly listen to each other, what will happen?
There'll be no arguments.
Exactly. We started with two opposite points of view. We butted heads, we argued, we fought, right? But the moment we started to listen, that means to say, I said this is A and you said this is the same thing is B, right? And I stopped and looked at, why do you call this A and why, or rather, why do you call this B and why do I call this A? We listened to each other. And suddenly we began to see, oh, you were looking at one side of it and I was looking at the other side of it. And that's all it was. We were looking at different perspectives. And that's what we were arguing about. You saw one part and said, no, it's made of glass. And I said, no, it's made of metal. And now we're arguing away. But now we've understood each other's perspective and the entire argument dissolves, right? So similarly, when there is contradiction, contradiction is meant to take you out of black and white thinking, either or thinking, and take you to a place that lies beyond duality. Duality is positive, negative, right, wrong, good, bad. That's a very simplistic way of thinking, right? Most religions are based on that. There's a right way and a wrong way. There is a good person and a bad person. You're going to heaven or you're going to hell. They're all very dualistic. But the Vedas take you beyond duality to the place of non-duality. To get there, they place these contradictions on your path. When you get to these contradictions, you get confused. And now you want to argue for one path versus another. And you fall into the same trap of black and white thinking and trying to be right. And so for thousands of years, people argued these points. Which path is better? Just like Arjun is asking right now. Is the path of devotion better? And worshiping God as a person? Or is the path of energy better? Non-duality, right? Which path is better? And you'll be surprised how much this debate has gone on over the centuries. In fact, over thousands of years, at least in India. But the reason these contradictions exist is this, that when you can accept both sides, you will find that the mind collapses. And as the mind collapses in its right and wrong thinking ideology, you're able to step into a different dimension. That dimension is the dimension of wisdom. That is the place where you get to experience the divine and not just understand or logically have theories and concepts, right? That is the place where you slip out of the clutches of your mind and out of the realm of duality and out of this world, and you enter into the true spiritual dimension, which is what we are being invited to do. Anyways, anyone have any questions about that before I proceed? Okay. So Krishna explains to Arjun, he says, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifest, impersonal feature of God, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. There on that path, what happens is you have to do the work. So think of it like this. It's a DIY process. Okay, do it yourself. And as most people on the spiritual path will tell you, have you done the work? And you'll say, well, no, you need to work on this more. You got to work on yourself. Very commonly used phrase, right? You got to work on yourself. And I'm not saying you don't have to. Because I'm going to give you two sides doesn't mean one negates the other. They're going to both be true. So bear with me. So he's saying that it's very difficult because it's a do-it-yourself process. You've got to meditate right. You've got to manage your thoughts right. You've got to be able to really be self-aware and be conscious of what's going on inside your body and mind. And very often when I teach stuff to people, they're like, oh my God, this is really hard to do. 24/7 you want me to manage my thoughts, and you want me to manage my emotions, and you want me to manage my reality. I mean, this is crazy. I cannot do it for 5 minutes, and you want me to do it for 24 hours. But I'm going to tell you the secret now. Today you'll understand what is the way out. Actually, I've been teaching it, but you may or may not have caught on the point. So then he goes on to say, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service or bhakti, always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds on me, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So what's he saying? I'll tell you in one word: grace. What is the process for that grace? Surrender. How do you surrender? That's what he's explaining out here, right? Where you devote yourself to God. Everything you do, like that song, everything I do it for you. That's such a devotional song, right? You'll never hear it the same way again. Everything I do it for you. That's what he's talking about. Giving up all your activities to me, worshiping me, being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me. For them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Look, both processes seek to liberate you from the cycle of birth and death. Whether you're a Buddhist who is wanting to become free of samsara, the wheel of birth and death, or whether you are a Vedantist who wants to get moksha and liberation, or whether you are into bhakti, the goal is the same: to become free of this material existence and to ascend into a spiritual dimension where there is no more birth and death, where there is no more suffering, where there is no more of this cycle of coming back again and again. It's an interesting thing that we may think, oh, this can only be attained in some, post-humanistic reality, that you have to die, go to heaven, and then you will experience this. This moksha, this liberation, can be experienced here and now. I remember a statement that Buddha made, actually, where he says, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. It's a real big distinction. Pain can happen. A car can hit you, or someone can beat you. Sure, pain will happen, right? Someone can steal your possessions. There might be pain of some kind, physical or mental. But suffering is optional. What does that mean? Anyone want to try?
You have a choice whether to be at peace or suffer.
How does that choice happen? Where is the choice point?
It's like if someone hit me, it's my choice whether I want to cry or I want to accept the situation as it is.
Right? Or hit them back.
Or hit them.
Right? There's that one too. Never thought about that one, did you? I see that you're a peaceful person who doesn't hit people back. All right, good for you. Anyone else? How is suffering optional? Why would Buddha say that?
Don't react.
Yes. And how do you not react?
By trying to be, I'm just making it up. By trying to be empathetic and see where they are coming from. What might they be thinking? Yeah.
I think you have got a definite point over there. Yes,
Yeah.
you could see where they're coming from. Anybody else?
Maybe detachment.
And what would that look like?
It would look like letting, not having a reaction to either good or bad, because neither has any more validity than the other.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would be like really detaching yourself from the situation, and not allowing either aspect to. So think of it like this: detachment is the opposite of attachment. But in this case, we're not talking about attachment to a person. We're talking about attachment to a thought. So when you get attached to a particular thought, like, what does that attachment mean? It means you believe the thought. Your mind says to you, this person said this because they're out to hurt me. They're out to, let's say hurt me. And when you have that thought and you believe that thought, right? Or this person is trying to in some way cheat me or lie to me or something. Once you believe that thought, you're going to have an emotional response, an emotion, and then from that emotion, a response. But if you're able to defeat that thought, if you're able to maybe have a conversation with the person and understand why they did, what drove them to act the way they did, if you're just simply curious, if you exercise this incredible ability we all have of curiosity, of wanting to understand why they did what they did, or why they thought what they thought, why they said what they said, you'd get, like we said, if there's two people and they listen to each other, right? Suddenly the whole thing collapses. The suffering that would have been caused collapses. So suffering is optional. Keep that in mind. Even, for example, the weather is really hot or it's raining, and if you resist reality, you suffer. Right? You cringe up when the weather is hot or it's cold, and then you'll find yourself suffering much more. You relax into it, you suffer less, maybe a lot less. Right? So as much as possible, the more you resist reality, the more you suffer, the more you accept reality, accept things as they are, the less you suffer. That's where that comes in. So coming back to what Krishna is saying to Arjuna here, he's saying you have an option and you can do exactly how you want. And in fact, he says here, in fact, he goes through a whole bunch of stuff. He says, just fix your mind on me and engage all your intelligence in me. But then he says, if you can't do that, then follow the regulative principles of bhakti-yoga. In this way, you'll develop a desire to. So, he gradually gives him a step by step, like, okay, you can't do this, then try this. You can't do that, then try that. Right? If you're not able to do bhakti yoga, then do karma yoga. That means act in such a way, giving up all the results of your work to me. If you cannot do this, then engage yourself in jnana yoga, cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge is meditation, and better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation one can attain peace of mind. So, choices. Now we come to the part that we left off at last time. Chapter 12, text number 13 and 14. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in serving God with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. I'm going to read through this entire list. It's an incredibly powerful list of symptoms by which you can recognize someone who is more advanced, rather than someone just because they wear some robes or have some title, and by which you can recognize your own spiritual growth. Because nowadays anything goes. Anybody who is an influencer, popular out there on Instagram or YouTube or wherever else, suddenly they're like, great personality. But here are symptoms. He by whom no one is put into difficulty, and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. My devotee who is not independent on the ordinary course of activities, who is pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains, and not striving for some result, is very dear to me. One who neither rejoices nor grieves, who neither laments nor desires, who renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things, such a devotee is very dear to me. One who is equal to friends and enemies, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is always free from contaminating association, always silent and satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any residence, who is fixed in knowledge, who is engaged in devotional service, such a person is very dear to me. Those who follow this imperishable path of bhakti and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. All right, it's a lot. It's a mouthful. It's a lot to take in, so I'm going to go over it step by step. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities. All right, how do you understand this? So what is envy? What is a person who is envious?
Jealous.
Like jealousy, but there's a difference between envy and jealousy. What's the difference?
Look up to you, like I envy you.
I mean, yeah, it could mean I wish I had that, right?
Yes. I wish I was like that, or I wish I
had that thing. Yeah, I own that thing or something like that.
Right. So which one is that? Is that envy or is that jealousy?
Envy.
Envy. All right.
Yeah.
And jealousy?
Jealousy is like how can he or she be better than me?
Okay. Good. Yes, that fits. Good. So one who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities. How do you get there? We all want certain things. You see someone who has the thing you want, right? Let's say you want to have a big house and somebody's got a big house, or you want to have a Tesla and somebody's got that, or a Mercedes, whatever's your standard of a great car, right? And somebody else has that. Immediately you become envious. You want to have that. You wish you had it. How do you become non-envious?
It's their path, it's their karma, it's their I'm trying to look for the right word.
Okay.
It's their journey. It's their journey. So they are at that point in their journey, so they have whatever they have.
But I want what they have.
Right. So I may want to do some introspection and see, without getting envious or jealous of them, what are the strategies I could adapt to get to that point.
Okay. So I appreciate that what you're saying is very sensible and logical. Krishna is presenting a different perspective here. So what you say is correct in and of itself, right? How can I learn from this person? How can I adopt their strategies? And how can I also have what they have? Absolutely right on. But that is at one level of consciousness. Krishna is going to present you a different level. He says here, and he reveals the answer in this here, who does not think himself a proprietor. Right there it is. So when you realize that nothing belongs to me, in fact, nothing belongs to anyone.
Right? Yeah.
I remember a time where I was writing, and I've been having these conversations with God and writing down the things that I would hear from this inner voice when I was in silence. And at one point I was told, go to the marketplace and everything you desire, from the cars to the houses and the TV, whatever it is you want, just look at that thing and say, this is mine. That is also mine, and that is also mine. But I leave it here. Why is it mine, you may ask? Okay. It is mine because it belongs to God. I belong to God, therefore this belongs to me. See, everything belongs to God. I belong to God, therefore this belongs to me. It's a simple logic. But the practice of doing that was extremely liberating. The practice of going out and saying, practically saying, this is mine, This is mine.
Mm.
It's like I remember a friend of mine who did not want to eat sweets, because you put on weight. So, so she would go up to a counter where they had beautiful chocolates and cakes and other things like that, and she would look at them, and she would taste them by looking with her eyes, right?
Mm.
And be satisfied. And about 10 seconds or a minute later, she'd say, "Okay, I'm done. Let's go." Right? It's a great way to give yourself that which you desire while at the same time allowing yourself to be free of it. So here Krishna is saying to not think yourself as the proprietor, to recognize that everything belongs to God. Everything. Everyone belongs to God. Everything existed before I came here, and everything will exist even after I leave here. So in fact, what is mine? The saying goes, we came empty-handed, we leave empty-handed. So nothing in fact was mine. I may have acquired billions of dollars and huge estates, but I will not take them with me. Everybody comes empty-handed and leaves empty-handed. That's the bottom line. So then you begin to understand that you're not the proprietor of anything. The things you have are in your care. They belong to God. They belong to this world, and they're in your care. Just like when you go to a hotel, the things in the hotel do not belong to you, right? Some people think they do. They'll walk away with the bathrobe or with towels or with other things. Guilty people are all laughing now. But as such, the things don't belong to you. You can't take the beds away, and you can't take the TV away from the hotel room. It belongs to the hotel. And similarly, everything in this world belongs to this world. Right? You have it temporarily. You're occupying it like you occupy a hotel room. But the house you own, the clothes you wear, the car you drive, the body you're in, all belongs to this world. And all of it will stay in this world. What belongs to the world will stay in the world. You, on the other hand, will not. You may go from this world to another world. You may go from this planet to another planet. It doesn't mean that you will stay here or necessarily come back here. All right, so the next thing he says, who does not think of himself as a proprietor and is free from false ego. What is false ego? What is real ego and what is false ego? So you guys,
Healthy,
yeah,
healthy ego.
what is a healthy ego?
When you have your ego in control, when you have your mind in control.
Let me take you back a little, one step further. What is the meaning of ego in itself? And I'm not talking dictionary meaning. I'm talking from a spiritualist point of view. What is ego? I'm not even looking at it from a psychologist point of view, because then you'll have Freudian concepts and you'll have Jungian concepts, and let's skip all that.
Ego is who you think you are.
Who you think you are. Got it. Perfect. Exactly right. Okay. So remember, who you think you are, think. And who you think you are is a product of all the thoughts that are there in your mind, right? All the things people said to you, all the things that happened to you, all the beliefs you created out of that, all of that mental construct is your ego, right? It's the self. I've recently been referring to it as the virtual self. Not the real self, but the man-made or virtual self. So real ego, the real self is the soul, the real identity. See, your real identity is the soul. The false identity is the ego. So therefore referred to as the false ego here. So one who is free from this false ego, from this false sense of self. If you are free from the false sense of self, then what happens? Where do you necessarily land? If you're free from the ego, the egoic identity which says you're a man or a woman, you're young or you're old, or you're smart or you're stupid, whatever your sense of self is, if you are free of that, then where do you land?
Non-duality, which is yourself.
Which is the true self, correct. Absolutely. Right? So when you are a person who does not think of himself as a proprietor, who is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, this is big. Who is equal in both happiness and distress. So to do that, to be equal in happiness and distress, let me tell you this, is not possible for the human mind. It is not possible. You have to transcend the mind to be able to have that experience of being equal in happiness and distress. To transcend the mind, right, requires you to engage in practices that uplift you out of this frequency and into a higher frequency. That frequency is the frequency of the soul that is experienced in silence. So when the mind is quiet, now you can first you begin to feel the soul, you begin to experience the soul, and gradually in time you can actually listen to the voice of the soul. It's soulful whispers, as I sometimes call them. So that part of you is capable of this kind of non-dual thinking, being equal in happiness and distress. Happiness and distress are dual. Non-dual is to be free of both happiness and distress. So to do that, you have to be out of your mind. Literally. Now, these are all symptoms being described, but I'm going to tell you the shortcut to get there. So a person who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in serving God with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on God, such a person is very dear to me. What is the answer to all this? How do you even begin to get here, to this place? Are you going to struggle your way there? Are you going to work your way there? Are you going to climb a mountain to get there? Will you go into the cave and fight with the dragons? And will you do, incredible heroic tasks to get there? How will you get to this place? Anybody?
Wait, place of what? Peaceful?
All these things he's describing, being equal in happiness and distress, tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, engaged in serving God.
By accepting everything the way it is.
Okay, that's the beginning. That's the beginning. Yes. That's the first step.
Surrendering?
Yes. Yes. What does surrendering mean?
Basically means that everything is happening for my highest good. I surrender, and I know that whatever the divine or whoever it is will be for my highest good. And I'm not going to be in control.
Okay, since you said, I'm going to catch you here now. Since you said divine or whatever it is, you better make up your mind. Is there something or is there not something?
And no, divine, universe, God, whatever people want to call it. Like, that's what I meant, something.
All right, something.
Yeah. People have words. Like,
People have words. Right. And we get stuck with words. Stake your place. That's what I've had to do. I was being very, for many years, not really stating the point. The point was I didn't want to use the word God because most people thought of God very differently. They thought of God as this judgmental person who sits in hell. I mean, sorry, not sits in hell, but sits on the clouds and sends people to hell. I just abbreviated both ideas. Right?
Yeah.
But Yeah, so I didn't want to use the word God for that reason, but I think it's important to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. If something is been abused, if a name has been abused, if a particular name has been completely messed up, it doesn't make it bad. See, what Shakespeare said very beautifully, says, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Right? So with that, you approach the idea of God and recreate that in your own thinking, because that is the commonly accepted term for source, or that which is the source of everything, right? So if that is there, then create your own definition around it rather than embrace the definition created by others, because we're referring to the same thing. And so we've got to take it head on and say, you know what, I'm going to use the same word, but this is what I mean by that. I mean a being and an energy, both, right? Because this is where we talked about how these two schools of thought have been always at opposition with each other. But in recent times, you have Chaitanya and others who came along and said, this is rubbish, you guys are being childish, right? Both things are simultaneously true, right? Both are best. that God is simultaneously the universe and energy that is everywhere, right? And is, whatever you want to say, field of possibilities or this or that, go right ahead. All of that on one side. And God is a being simultaneously. And if you want to argue which came first, neither of them came first. They're both eternal. So there is no beginning and end. There is no time in eternity. And therefore there is no such question of which came first, right? Both things have existed eternally. So how do you get to this place where one is actually having all these attributes and qualities that he's describing? The process is not difficult. The process is simple. See, when you break it down into the different facets, it appears very complicated. But if you take light like normal light, white, let's say white light, okay, normal light, then you put it through a prism. When it goes through the prism, it splits up into many rays, right? Then you can see almost the entire range of colors in there. But in and of itself, it's just light before you split it up. So here, the qualities are being split up. But the actual origin of these qualities is very simple. The origin of all these qualities is your soul. Your soul has all these qualities naturally embedded in it. It is the nature of who you are. And therefore you don't need to go out and cultivate each of these qualities separately. You simply need to get to the heart of the matter, right? To get to the heart of the matter means to access the soul. To access the soul requires the ability to quiet the mind. To quiet the mind, once it is quiet, it's very easy to come in here. Now, how will this thing happen? That's your basic challenge. That will happen through meditation. Meditation can happen in many ways, right? You can do it through sitting in yoga asanas and meditating on Om. You can do it through mindfulness. You can do it through, doesn't matter. There's a zillion processes of meditation. But
Join the evolution course.
Which one? Yeah. But the end result is important. I don't care what process you go through, get the end result. Once you have the end result, you connect with your soul, everything, all these attributes and qualities will come there. Now, what Krishna offered earlier, he says that if you surrender to me, I will help you in this difficult process, because even Arjun said to Krishna at one point, he says, to tame the mind is more difficult than taming the wind, right? So Krishna offers you a process for doing this is just depend on me. You fix your mind on me, and I will take care of the rest of it. See, for us, it's very easy to fix our mind on a person. it's very difficult for us to fix our mind on something that is impersonal. Very difficult. It can be done. It can definitely be done. Because ultimately you will tune into that consciousness within and you will ultimately succeed. But my personal experience has been this. As I walk this path of learning to trust and surrender and allow God to take care of me, as I turned to Krishna and said, "You are my everything. I place myself at your feet. I trust you that no matter what happens, you've got my back." As I repeated that again and again and walked with that understanding, month after month, year after year, I saw him take care of me. Meaning, when things were going, even when I first got here, when things were going bad, when things were difficult, solutions would emerge. People would show up. Things would happen. If you are willing to walk with that idea that God is with me and God has my back and is supporting me, then you will see literally like the waves parting when Moses was trying to go across the river Nile. You will literally see things like that happen. And I'm sorry, not literally, but metaphorically see things like that happen. You will not see literally water, rivers parting, but metaphorically speaking, you will see obstacles disappear when they seemed even insurmountable, and they seemed like there's no way I can make it through this. But surrender is a process that makes the impossible possible. It makes the most difficult circumstances easy to overcome. Right? If there's a story in the Ramayana where they want to get to Sri Lanka. So Ravan has kidnapped Ram's wife, Sita. Ravan came and deceived Sita. They were living in the forest. Ram and Sita were king and they were supposed to become the king and queen. He was the heir apparent. And they had been banished just before the coronation. And so Ram and Sita were living in the forest. The banishment was for 14 years. Why? That's a long story. But it's about a vow that his father made to one of his wives, and then she wanted that he would give her whatever she wanted. And at a particular key moment in time when the coronation of Ram was about to take place, the prince was going to be made into a king. This wife asked, she wanted her boon to be granted, that her son should be made the king and not Ram, and that Ram be banished from the kingdom for 14 years. So Ram and his wife went along, Sita, and his brother Lakshman went along. So they're all living in the forest. And Ravan comes along somewhere in the middle of that, disguises himself as a golden deer. And then Sita wants that deer, and Lakshman goes to capture the deer. And in the process, Ravan, this mystical being, a very powerful king of Sri Lanka, which is now, used to be called Ceylon, but now it's called Sri Lanka, he kidnaps Sita. And then Ram is looking for her everywhere. He goes from the north of India all the way to the south, which is, 1,500 miles or more. I have no idea, roughly, on foot, and crying, searching. Ram is known to be an incarnation of Vishnu, of Krishna, and he exhibits the personality of a human being. Anyway, when they arrive there, Hanuman and the other monkeys, they were known to be a Vanar. There's actually half man, half monkey. Perhaps the missing link. Who knows? I don't know. But no, actually Hanuman had fairly developed mystical powers and so on. Anyways, they wanted to build a bridge across from India to Sri Lanka. And so they were chanting the name of Ram and throwing rocks into the ocean, and the rocks would begin to float. That was their faith, that rocks thrown in the water would begin, big boulders would actually float. And using those floating boulders, they created a bridge. So again, it seems very impossible and improbable for us, but many have talked of the power of this name, the name of the divine. Krishna is saying that the impossible becomes possible by surrender. That's the point I was trying to make through the whole story. And that's the point that I've seen in my own life. No, I haven't made any boulders float. I haven't got that level of faith. But Christ hinted on the same thing as well. He says, if one has faith like a mustard seed. No, what was that? One can move mountains even if one has faith like a mustard seed, right? So the same idea is being indicated out there. I've experienced it in small ways in my own life, small little miracles that have occurred along the way. And I invite all of you to build a relationship with God, with Krishna, and to practice surrender. Surrender means alignment. It means aligning with thy will. Whatever is your will, I surrender to that. I let go my will. So it is thy will instead of my will. My will comes from what? Comes from my ego. What does my ego have? It has desires. It wants things to be a certain way. I am trying to therefore control the world and people around me so that they can be the way I need them to be. And they're often not like that. And therefore I get disappointed and hurt and upset and, frustrated and all of that. So surrender is the opposite of that. It's about allowing, it's about going with the flow of the river and not against it. It's about feeling and experiencing which way is God inviting me to go, and then going with that, finding out. But don't do this just from a way of trying to get along or do whatever anybody wants, or just, not rock the boat. That's not surrender. That you could be a people pleaser. But it's really about really being in a state of connection with God, and a state of guide me, help me see what I need to do so that I may do that. All right, any questions? We're going to stop here. I'm sorry, I didn't realize how much time I took up. Any questions at all? Mariah? No questions? How about Craig? You've been here, very quiet.
No questions for me. Thank you very much, Rohit. Beautiful.
Okay. I see you, Mariah. Is there any questions on your side?
No. Mm-mm.
Good. Swati? Somesh?
I'm good for today. I will ask more questions next time.
All right. Somesh, leave me your, I'm going to mute at least one more person. Yeah. Somesh, leave me your email in the chat. You can DM me, right? And then I'll add you to our mailing list as a reminder. So if you want to come back, you're welcome to come back.
Yeah. I will come back, and please do add me. I will send it to you.
Direct message me in the chat. Yeah.
I'm doing it right now.
All right. So, yeah, this is good. Krisha, I'll cycle back to you after I checked with everyone, since you had a lot of time in asking questions already. Any last questions?
No, all
Good.
my questions have been answered.
All right, fantastic. I'm sorry I didn't ask you guys earlier. But we're at a very exciting part of the Gita, and I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're starting to see the concepts coming together, the ones you've been used to and the ones that are being presented out here. There is no, if you're feeling a sense of conflict, if you're feeling a sense of confusion or chaos or contradiction, please welcome it, because that will take you into the mystery. into the unknown. Where the mind cannot grasp contradictions is where you will then enter into the mystery, because now you have to go beyond the mind. So I hope you will
Just a
take
curious question. Have you visited the land where Mahabharata happened?
Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is, yes, I've gone past there. There's nothing really there right now because after all it was a battlefield. But next time I must play this for you guys. I entirely forgot. Wonderful conversation with Will Smith and Jay Shetty about Will Smith's love for the Bhagavad Gita. So I will play that for you next time we're here.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But speaking of places, I think the bridge that you Setu that you mentioned, Rohitji, there are remnants of it still. That's what I've heard from people.
Oh wow. Yeah,
That's why I asked.
Ah.
Yeah, because I have a friend from a Tamilian who has lived in Lanka and Tamil Nadu both. He says he has seen those rocks.
And the name of Ram is carved on them.
That I don't know, but he sees remnants. He sees remnants.
Okay. Yeah, many of these things have been found. The palaces of Krishna in Dwarka Island have been found by deep sea divers.
Yeah.
Many of the things have been found already. So this is a deep history. Unlike the British who came to India and decided to call it mythology and then brainwashed our Indian people and the world into thinking it's some mythology. They thought it was mythology because it doesn't fit their mental paradigm. It doesn't fit their limited thinking. How is this possible? They're not able to figure it out. But, I said, that's why I started off today with the fact that those contradictions are there for those who really are serious about going deeper. And for the rest, it's okay. They don't need to come this way. It's not for everyone. It's all right.
No, we are I'm definitely interested, and thanks to you and Swati and the whole family here. Let me call us family.
It is a family. They have been a very, very wonderful family. They have been walking with me for quite some time now.
Very good. So I'm a new addition.
Please join us. You're welcome to join the family.
Yeah. And are we all in California?
No, Krisha is in the East Coast. Mariah is in California.
Okay.
Let's see. Swati's out here. Craig's
out. I'm in the Bay Area.
You're in the Bay Area. Okay.
Oh, I'll be soon there.
That's right. You're going to come here too. Good. Thanks to you, Somesh, your prediction. We're all going to be in California soon.
Very good. Very good. I like that.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.